Dr. Chris Labos, you know him here on CJAD. He's a cardiologist with a degree in epidemiology and a regular contributor here, of course. You can catch him on Sundays, on weekends with Joanne Vrakas at 7:20 a.m. And today, Chris, we will talk about this tuberculosis story, but I think I need to get to the story on pancreatic cancer first because I was watching some of the news coverage on this last night, and it was remarkable to see at a presentation, I guess this was in Chicago, once this was announced, literally a standing ovation by oncologists in that room. So tell us what's going on here and just how significant this is.
So basically what you had is, because this was the national meeting and it was simultaneously published in the New England Journal of Medicine, it was a trial on a new cancer therapy for pancreatic cancer called daraxonrasib. Even I have a hard time pronouncing it. But basically it's a pill, and what it's doing is it's inhibiting the main enzyme that drives most cases of pancreatic cancer, not all. It's inhibiting a specific protein called KRAS. It basically inhibits its production and it drops its levels by about 90%. And so developing a medication that can target this protein was seen as one of the major therapeutic goals of treating pancreatic cancer, which I think, as most people know, has a terrible prognosis. It's one of the more aggressive forms of cancer that there is. And so this trial was widely expected because not only people want to see the results, but they wanted to see if this hypothesis would bear fruit. And so the results, when they came out, were wildly positive. So the news reports were often saying you were seeing a doubling of life expectancy in patients who had metastatic pancreatic cancer, which is incredible. Now, to pour some cold water on this, the life expectancy went from about 6 months to 1 year. And you might say, well, 6 months is not a long period of time. But that being said, given how difficult it is to treat pancreatic cancer, especially the patients that they had in this trial, which, had, an aggressive metastatic pancreatic cancer, the fact that you could have that degree of life extension, even if it was only 6 months, was incredible because unlike most forms of chemotherapy, which have a lot of side effects and are very difficult, this was just a daily pill. So, a lot of people are saying this is not chemotherapy. Well, it is technically chemotherapy because it's still medication, but it's not cytotoxic chemotherapy. So it's not the medications, that are going to make you lose your hair where you have to go to the hospital and get an intravenous infusion on a regular basis. So as far as pancreatic cancer therapies go, the fact that you could take a daily medication and still see this degree of reduction in mortality is pretty impressive, not just because this medication is impressive, but it also means that this is now a potential future target for other therapies that might end up being even more successful down the road. So there's a lot of enthusiasm about this.
Yeah, so to your point, again, it's, and I should have pointed out at the beginning, it's not a cure. It's a long way from a cure. But as you said, 6 months, that's twice as long as you have a hope of living now if you have that kind of a diagnosis. And of course, that's 6 more months when work continues to try to find a cure.
Right, exactly. And, usually what happens is the minute some new discovery is made or the minute you have a new therapeutic target out there, now everybody realizes, this is a viable research strategy. This is something we can be pouring R&D dollars into. So one can easily see how now all of the pharmaceutical companies will try to see if they can develop their own version of a medication like this. And are you going to start to see improvements? And to draw a parallel with weight loss, the minute Ozempic comes out, what happens? All the other companies start to develop their pills. And now all of a sudden you have multiple injectable, multiple oral medications for weight loss, new things coming down the pipeline that might end up being even better. So there's a very, I think, realistic expectation that you're going to see a real improvement in pancreatic cancer treatment in the next few years. And of course, these were patients that already had metastatic pancreatic cancer. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens if you treat people with earlier stages of disease. Can you forestall the metastasis? Can you extend their life even further? And I know that this group, just because I was doing some background research on this research team, they've also been working on cancer vaccines. So could you inhibit this protein synthesis before the cancer even develops to prevent it from manifesting in the first place? So there's a lot of, I think, interest in this particular protein that is responsible, again, for about 90% of pancreatic cancers.
So I will ask, by the way, too, with respect to other cancers, because we're talking about pancreatic cancer specifically, does this shed some hope that this kind of a drug, this kind of pill could treat others?
Potentially. I think you have to be a little bit careful about thinking that, you're going to use this now for all other cancers. I think there's going to be some interest in it. The KRAS oncogene is involved in a lot of, in a few different types of cancer. So it's a new therapeutic target.
Okay.
I think other research groups are going to start looking at, can we now inhibit this to treat our form of cancer? I think what people have to remember is that, we talk about cancer as if it's one disease. It's actually many different diseases that we just have under the same umbrella. We'll see. But I think this therapeutic target, this gene, this protein is going to become a much more talked about thing in the coming years.
Just as a final question, because, we're talking about something going on in the U.S., what's the application here? How long? In Canada?
So the problem with any new drug is that the companies that make it will always apply for U.S. approval first, and then they start looking at getting approval in Europe and Canada. Now the difference is usually just a couple of months, but I expect the U.S. approval before they go to Health Canada to get an approval as well. Because every country is different, the company has to submit an application to each regulatory body individually to get approval. That being said, whenever you have a situation like this where there really is no good alternative, this is usually approved under some sort of expedited pathway, and the FDA has already said that they're going to do that. So I expect this sooner rather than later, but the company has to submit their package to Health Canada first.
So let me move on to the other story, which I saw just in the paper, I guess, yesterday or the day before, on the surge in tuberculosis infections. Now, my first reaction was tuberculosis. I thought that was out of the news for the last 50 years. What exactly is happening? Because we're talking about over 200 cases here.
Yeah, so, here's the thing. If you are walking around downtown Montreal and you're listening to us right now, you probably are shocked by the idea that there's still tuberculosis in the world, but there is. We don't see it that much in Montreal anymore for a very simple reason. We have antibiotics now. But there are many parts of the world where tuberculosis is still rampant. It's still a big problem up north in many of the Inuit communities where there's a lot of tuberculosis. And it's when you have people coming to Canada through immigration or travel, some of them have tuberculosis, either because they caught it overseas or they had latent tuberculosis that has gone undiagnosed. So there has been a surge of tuberculosis cases, mainly in Montreal, mainly because of new arrivals to this country. And so this is important because these people need to be identified, they need to be treated with antibiotics, and it can be like several months of treatment with antibiotics to get rid of tuberculosis. It's a very hard bacteria to kill, but it is treatable. And the importance of treating people is that tuberculosis can be very, very infectious. So you can pass it on to people, which then also need to have a several-month course of antibiotics. So it's a very important public health problem. And even if 200 cases doesn't sound like a lot, you should remember that before antibiotics, tuberculosis used to be a major problem that used to ruin people's lives. So we'll probably not get back to that point yet, but it's important to catch these people early before they start spreading it around their new communities.
What sort of warnings do you have here that they may be dealing with something like this? When you say people come here, is this one thing you don't know you necessarily have or have come into contact with?
It's possible. There are people who have latent tuberculosis who are, they got sick, many, many years ago. They cleared the infection, but the bacteria remain dormant in their lungs. And so unless you do a chest x-ray or do a TB test, you may not see that there are signs of tuberculosis. So, it's not a difficult disease to screen for and to test for, but you have to actually do the screening. People need to have the proper evaluation. And I think that's where a lot of the struggle is like making sure people actually get tested, especially if they have risk factors or come from parts of the world where tuberculosis is still very common.
And just as a final question, for those who are here and have been found to have it, is this simply a matter of treating them with antibiotics and we're done?
Yes, it is, but it's many, many months of antibiotics, and it can be hard, and that's why you have, protocols like directly observed therapy, where you actually have people come in to check to make sure they're taking their antibiotics, because it's hard enough to get people to commit to taking antibiotics for a week because, they feel better after 5 days and they don't finish their prescription. Right. So you can imagine that a 3, 6, 9 month course, that becomes a hard thing for people to stick to.
Dr. Chris Labos, Dr. Labos, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take
good care.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.